but basically, the thing that struck me is, reading your book, the first chapter was so powerful, where you discuss, or I believe it's either the prologue or the first chapter, but where you discuss how you got the judge bug. But it's more than just the fact that you presided over this case between these two women who were arguing about their hair. I mean, the law is not equipped, to deal with Black women and their issues, or Black folks, as we know. If you could just, and also the other thing is innovations that, like you say, come from Black people, like the Crown Act, and then, the ignition lock. I mean, sure. To me, I mean, yeah, the ignition lock, and we all go through something like that, where we try to innovate, and we run into hurdles moving forward.
Absolutely. So there's two parts to your question. So the first part is about how the legal system is ill-equipped really to deal. And I'm just going to focus on with Black women. And I say that because I write in the first chapter of my book, Bitten by the Judge Bug, about how I got even interested in being a judge. And it was because a white judge reached out to me and said, we have a judge pro tem program in our county. We don't have women, we don't have people of color. And I think it's important that we have folks participate who come from those kinds of experiences. And as a result of that, I ended up presiding over a small claims case. And this is when I was still a lawyer and I was an assistant dean at Stanford Law School. The case involved two Black women, one suing the other because one had braided her hair, put in some cornrows actually, and the woman who had the cornrows refused to pay her because she said she just did a terrible job. So I presided over that case. I knew what questions to ask. And at some point I even said to the woman who's complaining about the hair, I said, can I examine the evidence? Can I look at it? So she's like, yeah. I said, well, I need you to come up to the bench. And then I asked her, can I actually touch the evidence? She says, yes. So I put my hands on her hair and I knew what to look for. I was looking at whether or not the roots had been pulled up nicely and neatly into the cornrows. So I made a decision in that case. And for those who haven't read my book, I'll leave it as a teaser for what I decided. But what I thought when I was driving home that day was, one, I really liked being a judge. I liked being the one to make the decision when people couldn't work things out. But the other thing that hit me was I thought, well, wait a minute, in our court at the time, there were no Black judges. So if those women had come into court, they would have come before a white male judge who wouldn't have had a clue about what to ask, just even the whole idea of getting the cornrows and what made for a good cornrow job and what didn't. And that brought home to me the importance of having representational diversity in our court system as lawyers and also as judges, and really pushed me into wanting to be on the bench and be somebody there with a background that was different and experiences that were different from those who were sitting on the bench, primarily because we were going to see people who looked like me coming into the courtroom, and I wanted them to be able to relate to me relate to them. So that's my response to your first part. Your second part really is a question you asked about really judicial activism. And when I mentioned that, and at the confirmation hearing today and yesterday and the day before, activism was brought up and is seen as a pejorative, a negative. Oh, this is really bad, because it really has the definition of judges who are outliers, who are rogues. They don't care about the rule of law or judicial precedent. I write in my book that I was a judicial activist and proud of it, but my definition of a judicial activist is very different. It is that a judge should absolutely do the work, apply judicial precedents, abide by the law, but at the same time, do whatever it takes to make the system more fair and more just. And that should be a major part of what judges do, to be activists in that sense. So I write in the book where I endeavored to do that. I'd see a problem in our courts, and then I'm thinking, well, I'm a judge, I'm sitting at the helm of the system. If not me, then who? To try to address these problems. One of them was dealing with drunk driving. I was hit by a drunk driver on my way home from work from the courts. I was injured. My car was totaled. And when I went back to the courts, I really had a different view about what we were doing with drunk drivers. And basically what we were doing was very little, meaning slap on the wrist, pay a fine, and get back in your car and drive on the roads. So I was the first judge in California, and maybe in the country, to require drunk drivers convicted in my court to put breath devices, have them installed in their cars, which means you have to blow into them, and they're about the size of a cell phone. And then if there's any alcohol in the system, the car won't start. You basically disable this 2,000-pound weapon by having this device in the car. And I write in the book the story about what it took for me to be able to do this. I got such pushback from lawyers, primarily prosecutors, and from judges when I tried to do something different, to try to make the system better. Again, a teaser, read in the book. I mean, this thing got so bad that I ended up having to lawyer up and actually go to court because I was sued. I was actually sued by prosecutors to get me to stop doing this. I write in the book also about activism in the family court, where judges just basically make orders and you're supposed to follow them. But judges don't think about what it takes to comply with the orders oftentimes. And where people are poor, where people don't have the means to comply with our orders, we don't really kind of think about that. And it really brought home to me when I would see usually non-custodial parents who were dads who I'd order supervised visits, and they'd come back to court. Did you have your visit? No, because they had no idea, how do I do that? How do I do a supervised visit? So I pushed back and I tried to figure out, how can we make this fair so these dads can see their kids? And I came up with a supervised visitation program. I write about it in the book, and it went nationwide. There are now supervised visitation programs in courts throughout the country, but not without struggle. So it's about being persistent and understanding that activism is a part, not just for judges, but also for lawyers in the system. It's on us to make the system better and to be activists in the best sense of the word.
But Judge Cordell, if you could follow up and talk about how those innovative things that you've done are informed by being a Black woman, because you take that to the you took that to the bench. It's an underlying theme in your book.
I believe that for example, when I tried to get the breath device thing going, I got pushback from my fellow judges. I was the only Black woman on the bench, and I got huge pushback. And I absolutely believe that had a white male judge been the one to initiate this, there would not have been that kind of pushback. And that's very sad for me to have to say that, but I do believe that. I also learned a lesson, though. I learned that when you're the first and when you're trying to do things differently, one way that to make things easier when you're trying to bring change is to try to bring others into the fold. So I was basically doing this because it was my own courtroom. I figured I can do what I want in my courtroom, but it doesn't work that way. Word gets out that you're doing something, then others start thinking, well, if it really catches on, I may have to do it, and I don't want to do it. So I learned from all of this, one of the takeaways was to reach out, even to those who I might feel are in the opposing camp, to say, look, this is what I'm doing, and explaining it. And even if I didn't get the buy-in, there may have been less resistance. So the lesson, the takeaway is that, as a Black woman in a legal system, and if we're talking specifically about judges, there's just different pressures on us.
All right, everyone, thank you for watching Asked and Answered. And if you like what you see, if you like this content, if you like all the series, please smash that like button, click subscribe.